Hey guys, and welcome back.
This is Through the Trapdoor. I'm Emily.
And I'm Katie, and we're going to read you some Harry Potter fan fiction.
Today we're reading Chapter 8 of A New Leaf to Turn. Last week.
We met Teddy!
Woo!
And they went to Harry's house.
Yeah, whatever.
And they went back on the whole compound thing and called it a normal house.
Yes, all of a sudden it was a normal house and not a compound anymore, and I was really kind of excited for the compound.
All right, Chapter 8, here we go.
The Dursleys watched as James got up from his seat, eager to greet the turquoise-haired wizard, Teddy. "Teddy, I didn't know you were coming over tonight," the oldest Potter boy said joyfully, hugging the younger man quickly. Teddy laughed. "You know, I didn't know I was coming myself for a while. I just came from visiting..." Oh God, there it is.
Victoire.
"And I just thought who do we have here?" The flamboyant wizard had finally realized he wasn't the only guest in the Potter's house, as he took a step forward towards the table. This loss of focus caused him to stumble and almost lose his balance as he looked from Dudley to Diane to Will to Mari. "Uncle Harry, why didn't you tell me you were having company? You made me look like an idiot." Harry laughed. "You did that all on your own, Teddy." Truth.
But such an uncle response.
It really
You
is.
managed that all by yourself.
You're the one who did that. I was just kind of here. "But if you must know, this is my cousin Dudley." Dudley nodded at the brightly colored wizard. "His wife Diane." Diane gave a small wave, not sure if she liked the man's presence or not. "And their children, Will and Mari." Both Dursley children weren't as affected by Teddy's appearance as their parents had been. Will smiled at the older boy, while Mari waved happily, giggling. "Hiya," the youngest Dursley said happily, swinging her legs in her seat. Will smiled. "Dudley, this is my godson, Teddy Lupin. But really, call me Teddy." The colorful wizard clapped his hands on Harry's shoulders. "The only people that call me Ted are my Grams and Uncle Harry when he's upset with me." Laughing, Teddy reached over to his godfather's shoulder and grabbed a roll from the breadbasket. Unfortunately for Teddy, his hand was slapped away by none other than Ginny. "Teddy Lupin, if you are going to eat my food, then you are going to sit at my table." The red-haired woman tried her best to sound stern to the 19-year-old in front of her guests. "Aw, come on, Auntie Gin. You know I'd never say no to a meal with the Potters." The purple-robed wizard retrieved his wand out of the folds of his cloak. Dudley almost winced. Even though he was gradually getting used to the magical world, this was the first time he'd seen a wand since that night. How odd. It had been a wand that saved his life, and yet he was still half expecting the vibrant wizard to put a curse on him. But no. Teddy instead simply waved his wand, and after muttering something under his breath, made a chair appear out of thin air. As he sat down, Teddy almost immediately had a spot made for him on the table, regardless of how many people were seated. Teddy was still grinning as he settled himself into his seat. "So," the wizard started looking at Dudley, "are you the long-lost cousin, or have you and your lovely family been locked in the tower for all these years?" "Teddy!"
I love Teddy.
"What? I'm just asking a question, Aunt Jen. It's not every day I get to meet a family member I didn't know existed."
Fact.
I feel like he is so sassy, and I love every second of it.
Yeah, he is literally the best parts of Tonks and Lupin.
He really is. Dudley wasn't sure what to say. Did he say that Harry and him had been feuding since they were children? Did he tell everyone that they hadn't spoken in almost 20 years? Luckily, Harry noticed Dudley's discomfort. "Well, you see, Teddy, Dudley is a muggle." Harry's godson blinked. "You don't say! Wild!" "That's ironic," Dudley thought. "He thinks I'm wild." Yes, and muggles don't use owl post or flues like we do, so it's been hard to keep in contact. Harry chuckled at the look on Teddy's face. Diane looked at Dudley, trying to discreetly mouth flu. To Dudley's surprise, it was Will that answered his mother. It's a way of communicating through fireplaces, Mum. Out of the corner of his eye, Dudley could have sworn he saw Harry smile softly at Will. Anyways, Teddy continued, ignoring the tender moment between Will and Harry. Why the sudden family reunion? Harry rolled his eyes at his godson. Well, you see, Teddy, Will here just got his letter to Hogwarts, so now seemed like a good time to get together. Will beamed at the mention of Hogwarts, and so did Teddy. Really now? Teddy raised his pierced eyebrow. So you and Al will be starting together? Will nodded eagerly. Yes, sir. Beside him, Al suppressed a snicker. Teddy grimaced. Please just call me Teddy, I beg of you. I could see Teddy almost being like a replacement for Fred, for George. Like, not quite, obviously.
But I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Because I can see it.
Like, he'd be a good fill-in, for lack of a better way to describe what he would be.
Yeah, he would definitely be able to keep up with his banter. But I feel like Ron really filled in that gap in the real story.
Yeah, he did. At this, Will blushed, while James and Al began to laugh. Taking another sip of pumpkin juice, the older wizard continued. I remember my years at Hogwarts. Best years of my life, I must say. The food, the pranks, the people, the classes, the pranks. Lily giggled from her end of the table. You said pranks already. The turquoise-haired wizard laughed. Well, I really like pranks. Ginny rolled her eyes, looking at Diane. He takes after my brother too much. Will leaned forward in his seat, over his plate. What house were you in? The statement Will had made to Teddy made no sense in Dudley's mind. What in the blazes were houses? Why, I was in Ravenclaw. Teddy puffed out his chest in pride. Like, I could see him being either a Gryffindor or a Hufflepuff. Like, I could not see him being a Ravenclaw.
Yeah. No, he was a Hufflepuff. He is a Hufflepuff. And that's the only way I can see Teddy is as a Hufflepuff.
Okay, well, just bottle up your anger for a minute.
I will.
Will looked from Teddy to Al. Is that a good thing? Harry laughed. There are no good or bad houses, except for Slytherin. That's enough, James. The dark-haired wizard rolled his eyes. As I was saying, there aren't good or bad houses, just houses that have different qualities that they value. Teddy interrupted his godfather. Like Ravenclaw, for example. Ravenclaws are known to be very intelligent and clever. The entire Dursley family, excluding Mari, who had long since lost interest in what the grown-ups were saying and was giggling with Lily about some joke that no one had heard, stared at Teddy. This bright-haired, loud-mouthed, clumsy wizard was considered clever? Hard to believe, I know, Harry remarked in response to the look of disbelief on his cousin's face. If I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have believed it. But Teddy can be brilliant when he's not acting like a loon. Aw, love you too, Uncle Harry. Teddy cooed at his godfather. Will laughed. What are the other houses? What do they value? Dudley and Diane shared another look. Will's values would be determined based on his house. What if Will didn't have those values? Teddy buttered a roll. Let's see. Right now you're surrounded by Gryffindors. Harry and Ginny chuckled while James gave a thumbs up to Will. And everyone at Hogwarts know that Gryffindors value recklessness and the hero complex. True.
Such a fact.
Very true. Hey, be nice, Teddy. Harry laughed at the Dursleys' faces.
We Gryffindors actually value courage and chivalry.
It's just a running joke at Hogwarts to exaggerate the qualities of each house. Like Ravenclaw, everyone will joke about them being bookworms and know-it-alls. Right, because I am a bookworm, Teddy laughed. Ginny rolled her eyes. Anyway, there's also Hufflepuff. They value hard work and acceptance. Will nodded. All those sound like good qualities. Dudley couldn't help but agree. There was nothing wrong with having chivalry, being accepted, or being clever. What's the last house? The Potter family and Teddy looked at Harry, who, after seeing all eyes on him, sighed. The last house is Slytherin. The qualities it values aren't necessarily bad, despite what James tells you. Slytherin house values ambition and cunning. Will pondered this for a moment. I guess I'll have to wait until I'm sorted to figure things out. At this, Harry smiled. Passage of time. After dinner, both families and Teddy moved out into the backyard for coffee. Dudley held Diane's hand as they sat on the small patio. How are you feeling? He asked after seeing his wife's dumbstruck face. Diane sighed, looking at her husband. I guess I'm just overwhelmed. To think this entire world was thriving without our knowledge, and now it seems Will's diving headfirst into it. Well, to be fair, humans still don't understand everything that goes on in the ocean, yet people dive headfirst into it every day. Dudley almost groaned at how lame his analogy sounded. That was actually a very good analogy.
I know, it's like very well thought out.
And Diane didn't appreciate the image either. Please do not tell me you just compared our son to a starfish. Of course not. He's definitely a dolphin.
I feel like he definitely compared his son to like a world-class diver.
Yeah.
More than a starfish.
The two looked at each other before chuckling, their unease ebbing away. What are those? Both Dudley and Diane turned their attention to Mari. The little girl was pointing at the 3 hoops that had been set up on poles that towered above the house. It was amazing. Dudley hadn't seen those before. Beside Mari, Lily giggled. Those are Quidditch hoops, silly. What in the world is Quidditch? Dudley wondered. It wasn't until the entire Potter family stared at him that Dudley had said his statement aloud. But what further surprised him was when Will responded, Quidditch is a wizarding sport, Dad. It's played on brooms. Now I know you're all kidding with me, Diane said as she shook her head. A game played on brooms? Harry chuckled. It does sound a little odd, I know, but it's really a fun game. Will stared at the hoops. Tell me how to play. I want to fly on a broomstick. You said I could. When had Harry said that? Dudley wondered, but Harry smiled. I did say that, didn't I? Well, maybe if one of my good sons could go get our brooms and our Quidditch set, we could start a game. Harry sent a knowing look to James and Albus, and soon the 2 boys, accompanied by Teddy, raced off to the garage. Dudley couldn't help himself. How does Quidditch work? Harry smiled at his cousin's enthusiasm for his favorite sport. It's literally the only wizarding sport. Calm down. Harry smiled at his cousin's enthusiasm for his favorite sport. Well, Quidditch is played with 14 players, 7 on each team, and it has 4 balls. That sounds confusing, Diane muttered, and Dudley nodded in agreement. I don't think that sounds confusing. Like, you described, 2 things about the whole thing.
Yeah, but it could be overwhelming. 4 balls? Goddamn.
Yeah, true.
And they already know it's 14 people on broomsticks.
True. Harry chuckled as the boys made their way back, James carrying a chest, and Al and Teddy carrying brooms. Well, once you know which players focus on which balls, it makes things easier. Here you go, Dad, James grinned, setting up the chest on the table. Harry smiled to his son before opening the chest and pulling out a large red ball. This is what's called a quaffle. Ginny rolled her eyes before snatching the ball from her husband. Give that here, Harry, and let a chaser do the talking. A quaffle is handled by 3 players, called chasers. The redhead smirked. That's what I usually played on the school team. The chasers try to get the quaffle through those hoops over there. Ginny finished as she pointed over towards the hoops. Not like you've played in years, Auntie Gin. The former Weasley woman put her hand on her hip. Oh, I can still play a mean game of Quidditch, Teddy. Come off it, Aunt Gin. You're rusty. 3 galleons says you can't get that quaffle through the goal. Ginny raised her eyebrow, then turned to face the hoops, tossing the ball in her hands a few times. The former Gryffindor chaser narrowed her eyes at the nearest goalpost. Finally, the redhead drew back her arm and let the quaffle fly. The entire company watched as the red ball arched gracefully through the hoop. Ginny smirked. You owe me 3 galleons, Teddy. Don't ever tell me I'm rusty. Now go get the quaffle.
Yes.
Teddy grumbled, but did as his aunt asked. Harry grinned. Now that's my wife for you. But moving on. Also, on each team there's a keeper who tries to stop the chasers from scoring. Ooh, like in football. Exactly like football, but on broomsticks. Harry laughed. There are also 2 players on each team called beaters. James grinned. That's me. I play for the Gryffindor team at Hogwarts. As if to show proof, James picked up his beater bat, which only confused the Dursleys. Harry smiled. The beaters handled the other 2 balls, called bludgers. I'm not going to let the bludgers out of their box because I don't want anyone getting hurt. Are they dangerous? Diane's grip on Dudley's hand tightened, afraid of what sport her son could be playing. Harry gave a sheepish smile. Well, what a bludger does is fly around the pitch trying to knock players off their brooms. It's the beater's job to keep the bludgers away from the players. James gave the Dursleys a reassuring grin. Don't worry, nobody's been seriously hurt by a bludger at Hogwarts since Dad broke his arm when he was 12. That bludger was tampered with, James. It doesn't count. Dudley stared at his cousin. Harry had played a sport. Harry continued with his speech. And finally, there's the Seeker. Ginny nudged her husband's shoulder. That would be Harry, finest Seeker Hogwarts had ever seen. Well, anyways, the Seeker tries to find this. Harry reached into the chest and retrieved a small golden ball. It couldn't have been any bigger than a walnut, with delicate wings that tried to flutter away from Harry's hand. Each Seeker tries to find this before it's caught by the other team's Seeker. Once the snitch, Harry gestured to the ball, is caught, the game is over. Will was listening with rapt attention. Can we play now? Dudley looked at his son. There had been a time when he thought Will had been excited to learn to box, but now Will never seemed to want to stop learning about anything in Harry's world. Will's world. Harry smiled. Well, I can't let the bludgers or the snitch out, but you kids can play with the quaffle and practice your aim. Hey, Teddy, the black-haired wizard yelled to his godson, who was just approaching with the quaffle. Get a game going, would you? A passage of time. If someone had told Dudley last week he'd be watching his son learn to fly on a broomstick while his wife discussed recipes with a witch and his daughter would be playing with enchanted dolls, he would have told them to have their head examined.
I would not want an enchanted doll. It would scare me.
It would be so creepy.
Like, I didn't even like those dolls that, like, made noises. I liked water babies. You know, those rubber dolls that you filled with water? So they were warm and felt like real babies, but if you poked a hole in them, they leaked.
Yep.
But they didn't make any sound or anything.
It's true. But here he sat on the patio of the Potter's house, watching as James, Al, and Teddy instructed Will on how to fly a broomstick. He's a good kid. Dudley turned to look at Harry, who was still smiling at him. Will's a sweet boy. Dudley nodded. I know. I like to tell people he takes after his mother. Harry gestured to Mari, who was playing dolls with Lily. Then who does Mari take after? Her mother. Diane always did have a girly side, even if she never wanted to show it. The wizard chuckled. You know, when I first read your letter, I had to double check to make sure I had read it correctly. For some reason, I had never imagined you with children. Just like I had never imagined you playing a sport. Touché. Dudley sighed, watching his son. To be honest, I never thought I'd have kids either, or a wife. What changed? Harry leaned on the patio railing. It took Dudley almost an entire minute before responding. That night, when we were 15, the Dementors? Dudley nodded slowly. Whatever they're called. They made me see what I really was. A fat, spoiled, horrible excuse for a human being. Dudley. Don't even try to say that it wasn't true, Harry, because it was. I was spoiled by my parents into thinking that all that mattered in the world was me, that I deserved everything I wanted, and if anyone tried to get in my way, all I had to do was beat them until they gave me what I wanted. And I was fat, Harry. You didn't even recognize me, remember? I never said you weren't those things. Harry tried to smile, but his cousin knew that they were reliving unhappy memories. So you were afraid of being your parents' pet? Well, that and you, Harry. The green-eyed man was surprised to say the least. Me? What did I do? Harry, I treated you horribly growing up. I beat you, I teased you, I chased you up trees. For crying out loud, Harry, I made fun of the fact your mother was dead. Not even 20 minutes before you saved my life. You were everything I wasn't. Selfless, brave, hardworking. So once I recovered from that night, I knew I needed to change. The first step was letting you know I didn't hate you. The last time we saw each other. Dudley gulped. Yeah, when I got to university, I joined the cross-country team. It was strange, to say the least. Working out? Dudley looked at Harry, who looked down. Sorry, that was a bad joke. It's alright. But it was strange because I was the one being teased for a change. It made me think of you, and all those years I tormented you. It made me run faster and work harder, and before I knew it, I could see my belt buckle. Then I met Diane. Then Will and Mari came along, and life's just been going so good for me since. I'm glad, Harry smiled. After you fled from the house, I spent the entire year trying to defeat the man who killed my parents. Dudley stared at his cousin. And did you? Harry nodded. Yeah, but don't tell Diane or your kids about how I killed a man at the age of 17. Dudley didn't know how to respond to Harry's request. War makes people do things they didn't think they could do, Dudley. War? Harry nodded again. I'm still surprised at how secretive the wizarding world can be. We were able to have a war, and no one in the Muggle world, except those related to a witch or wizard, knew about it. Dudley pondered at that for a moment. Finally, the blonde looked at his cousin. Harry, can I ask you something? Sure, I see no reason why not to. Harry smiled softly. Why did you save me when we were 15? Dudley stared at his cousin. He had to know. Because it was the right thing to do. Harry made it sound so simple, so easy. Dudley shook his head. But I was absolutely wretched to you. I mocked you for having nightmares. I bullied you from the time we could walk. I made your childhood torture. Harry stared out at the Quidditch field. Dudley, I never said it was the easy thing to do. I said it was the right thing. But, Dudley, if doing the right thing were easy, everyone would do it. Harry smiled softly. Anyone can do what is easy, but a man's character comes to him when he starts doing what is right, especially when it's hard, like losing 300 pounds of bullying, spoiled, selfishness, and pride. Dudley fell quiet, just thinking back on Harry's words. Just when Dudley thought he had done a lot of growing up in the last 20 years, Harry shows him that he still had a lot of growing to do. But there was a lot of truth in his cousin's words. Anyone could do what was easy, such as walking out on his grandson because it would be too hard to accept him for what he was. But Dudley watched as Will mounted his first broom. He knew that he was coming to a crossroads. He could do what was easy and ignore or reject Will for his gift, or he could learn to go against everything he had been taught and to love his son for the boy he had held for the first time 11 years ago, the boy who took his first steps walking into his father's arms, the boy who came home from school excited to show his parents the picture he drew just for them, the boy he had come to love so much. Will's feet left the ground as the broom rose higher and higher in the air. He's flying, Dudley said in amazement. Harry just smiled.
What a sweet little cousin heart to heart.
I know, it was perfect.
Like, it's such a sweet little moment. And, like, I love that because it's right. It wasn't the easy thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. Just like it wasn't the easy thing for Dudley to change who he was as a human being, but it was the right thing for him to do.
Yeah, no, it was important that Dudley change who he was, just like it was important to Harry for who he is as a person to save Dudley, no matter how hard it was.
To actually save him, because no matter how terrible a person is, unless they've literally murdered your family, Harry's like, cool.
Yeah.
I can maybe save you if you just decide to not be such a dick.
Yep.
And that's what he did.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Any other Harry Potter tangents you want to talk about today?
I don't know. Do we have any new ones?
Probably.
I'm sure we could find one in our brain.
Yeah. All of these, like, angry tweets about J.K. Rowling introducing Nagini make me really mad.
Love every minute of it.
I love it. Like, it...
And, like, clearly the actress who is playing her is just so freaking excited.
Yeah.
Like, all these people who are like, it's a woman of color and it's a slave to a white man. No, it's a slave to a snake man. He's not a human, first of all.
Yeah.
He's like a half snake wizard evil man.
Yeah, no, I was actually watching a video about it not that long ago. And the person who did the video was talking about how he thinks that, like, if you think about it, she was a woman. Like, she grew up as a woman and she had this blood curse and that made her turn into a snake.
Right.
And at some point, whether it was during the Fantastic Beasts movie or sometime later, she's been a snake for about 60 years at this point.
Right.
So she hasn't talked to another human being in like 60 years.
And then here comes this guy who can talk to her.
Yeah. So even if she doesn't believe in what he stands for, she is just excited to have someone to speak to.
Right. And I saw another thing explaining it, and it was, she's not a slave. She's a follower. She is one of his Death Eaters. And now it makes way more sense that he could literally ask her to do things and she could actually do all of these things, like climb inside of Bathilda and make her a puppet, basically.
Yep. Yeah.
Because she's literally a human woman who has this blood curse and was turned into a snake. So she's got all of these memories and all of this cognitive reasoning.
Yes. And another thing I saw was nowhere in the blood curse does it say that, like, she's going to have the normal lifespan of a human or a wizard or a snake or any of these things. Like, she could very well be immortal, which would be why Voldemort was like, hey, let me put a piece of my soul inside you.
Right. And, like...
Which would make sense. Like, if she is realistically immortal... It would make perfect sense for Voldemort to put a piece of his soul inside of her.
Oh, yeah. And I love it. I literally love everything about it. I love that it was an Asian species of snake that she turned into, so they actually got a wonderfully talented Asian actress to play her. This is not just slapping a POC actor in a thing to make it diverse. No, it makes sense.
It does.
And if you see literally anything with this actress, when she can finally announce who she is so excited.
She's so excited about this.
Like, in like every other actor who's in any of these panels is like so pumped for the news.
Yeah, like they're all super excited. Like, I love it. It's great.
I watched the trailer like 4 times and I was like,
yes,
Nagini's a woman? What? Yes! Alright guys, thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.
A nice one. And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Through the Trapdoor 16 and on our Twitter at The Trapdoor 16.
Because Through the Trapdoor was too long for Twitter.
Yep.
And you can email us at throughthetrapdoor16@gmail.com with any story suggestions, or if there's anything you think that we need to see, whether it's a meme or another fan fiction, or if you have anything to say to us.
Bye.
Bye.